he is a lower 20-year-old quarter horse, and they use him for giving riding lessons, and he goes to camps in California, and they do Girl Scout camps, and the Girl Scouts ride him for a few days at a time and swap out, and another group comes in, and he does that for about 7 weeks in the summertime. And I'm in Arizona. His camp that he goes to is in Northern California. So they're getting ready to take their horses out there. And they have 13 horses here on the property, and they take all 13 of them out there. And they've been doing that for quite a few years. Thor is a horse that they said might be a little bit more difficult to work on. And they brought him over here, and I saw this super long back and immediately figured that they were probably right. So I'm going to work on him and see what he's got going on. He's got some scarring on his withers where and I have a tray full of hay behind me, and you can see he's already trying to get at that. So if he's moving around too much, I will move him here in a second. Let's turn the mic off. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start with him on his hind end and see how that's feeling. And then I'm going to go from his pelvis to his low back. And I just want to see how he's moving back here and if he's comfortable flexing it. No, if he's comfortable flexing and extending through here. Might have to move him in a minute since he's distracted by all this hay right here. Can't blame him. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to extend his pelvis and see if he can do this comfortably. Boy. Oh, no. All right, I'm going to flex him. Hey, oh. All right, I am going to move him. We will just, I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to put him in the stall right here. Okay, that should be better. All right, so I'm going to go back to his pelvis. Boy. All right, so I'm going to go back to his pelvis and try to get him to flex for me. See if he can lift his back. Let's see, and these long-backed horses sometimes have a more difficult time doing that for obvious reasons. Well, usually they're okay lifting through here, but then when you get to the area just behind the withers, so the mid to upper thoracic area, they have a hard time lifting through there. And you can see, I mean, I don't know if you can see, but just right through this area, his muscles are really, really tight. You can start seeing a little valley running along the top center line of his back. And that's usually indicative of abdominal weakness or just muscle hypertonicity or spastic muscles in the thoracic spine, the paraspinals right here. Oh. So as the abdominals get weak, the back starts to drop, and those mid-back muscles get really, really tight. All right. All right, he's going to win an award of getting tied up here. Okay, let's see. Nobody. Good-minded, just going to stand still. Let's see. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to lift his back. There we go. Oh, it's too close. Stop. Of course, the other horses I just got done working on here all stood perfectly still. Break the camera out, and Murphy's Law takes over. All right, so I'm going to check this right side. Good. It's nice and springy, not too tight. And check the other side of the side joint here. So that's quite a bit looser there. So now I have a little bit of an extension restriction on the right side of the side joint. So I'm going to flex him down, or extend him down rather, like this. There's a little pop there already. There we go. Oh, good boy. And then I'm going to adjust the side also. Boy. Ooh, there we go. Beautiful. So nice when you get these SI joints to release, because that helps the opposite shoulder tremendously. There we go, boy. And she was telling me earlier that he's having an issue with his left shoulder, so that's really good to get that right side SI joint moving. Good boy. All right, and since I was tight on the right SI joint in extension, I'm probably going to have some tightness in the left SI joint in flexion. Oh, so you don't really like that pressure there. So, oh, so I try to get him to stand still. I put a little pressure through the SI joint. And the SI joint, SI stands for sacroiliac. Oh, there we go. So sacroiliac joint is made up of the sacrum and the ilium. So sacrum is a triangular shaped bone in the pelvis, and the ilium is a big flat bone. So it's these big flat bones that run right here. You can't see me, but they're these flat bones here. It's where our glute muscle sits. It's where their glute muscle sits. So you have this big triangular bone. Looks like this, right? Kind of looks like the shape of my fist and my wrist. And that's sitting here, and the ilium comes up against it, and they rotate like this. It's called nutation. And so you have the sacral iliac joint, boom, boom, boom. So when one leg's coming forward, that's flexion, the sacroiliac joint has to go into flexion. And when it goes behind, the sacroiliac joint has to go into extension. So on one side, you have the sacroiliac joint going like this. On the other side, you have the sacroiliac joint going like this. And they're always moving the opposite direction. So if I have a SI joint that's tight, for instance, if I have a sacroiliac joint that's tight, trying to get it to go into extension down and back, then I probably have another SI joint on the other side that's tight going into flexion, up and forward. So I always adjust the SI joints in opposite directions. And that way you're sure to take care of the problem, because if I only adjust one SI joint because it's tight going a certain direction, it might be tight going that direction because the other SI joint is stuck or restricted. And you don't really know which is which. So it's best to adjust them both in opposite directions and make sure that you're clearing out the pelvis properly. I hope that helps. I like to talk about the anatomy while I'm doing this, because a lot of people don't understand the anatomy of their horses. And I think it really helps to know some of these things, especially if you're stretching your horses, right? Let's say you're stretching your horse's hind legs, and you feel like one of the hind legs is tight going into flexion, but the other leg feels fine going into flexion. You might not even check the hind legs into extension. But if one leg's tight into flexion, you can be certain that the other one's going to be tight in extension. So you want to check both legs, and you want to check them in both directions, because you're usually not going to have one leg that's tight going one way and another leg that's not tight going the opposite way. All right, so I'm going to bring his head around to his shoulder. I'm going to try to. I'm going to come and touch my hand. Boy. Oh, that was huge. Hopefully you guys could hear that. There was a bunch of releases right there with that flexion to the shoulder. let's see, rather it's more rotation, but at the end he's got some flexion there too. Can we go back? Good boy. And he's an old rope horse, so you would expect that he would be worse to the right because he always went to the left. But we're going to check both sides and see how he is going to the left. Let's see. I want him to come touch again. There we go. Good. So a couple smaller ones there, but nothing like he had going to the right. So I'm going to give him that for a second. Good boy. That's awesome. There we go. Big deep breath. Love to see all the signs of release and relaxation. I don't put a whole lot of stock into the whole licking and chewing thing. I think that as a response is quite overrated. But I'd like to see it. I just don't think it's as important as a lot of people do. They'll think that because they're licking their lips that it's a huge release. And on the opposite side of that coin, they'll think, well, if they're not licking their lips, then you must not have gotten it right, or you must not have helped him. And I just don't think that's the case. Like, look at his head positions low. He took that big deep breath. Like, you can have a horse standing here like this, completely relaxed, but if you didn't lick his lips, then people tend to think that you didn't get it or you didn't help him. But I just love to see the overall body language and see if they're relaxing more and more as I go on, or do they become more and more hypervigilant and concerned and looking like they're uncomfortable. So in his case, I like what I see. So I'm going to bring him back around to the right. I want to see him touch again without having all those releases. So I'm going to ask him easy. Good. Good. That's what I want to see right there. Also love to see them holding their head over to the side. A lot of horses, they'll whip their head over, then snap it right back. But I like to see them be able to hold their head over there for a second and kind of touch my hand for a minute without popping their head right back, being straightforward. So that's really good. So I'm going to check his atlas. That's his first vertebrae in his neck. And make sure it's not rotated up here. And that feels really good. And I want to check him in extension of his pole. So I'm going to put him up on my shoulder and see if he can extend at the base of the skull where it meets the cervical vertebrae. It's called the pole in horses, also called the atlanto-occipital junction in both people and animals. And I'm just going to ask him to bring his head down for me. So I'm asking using the pressure on under my hand. So I'm not forcing him to come down, and I'm not trying to yank his neck down. I'm just adding a little bit of pressure at a time and seeing him drop his head or feeling him drop his head. Right now, he's just holding the position. He's not moving it at all. So I'm going to ask him for a little bit more and see if he comes down. He's coming slowly. And if he starts to fuss, then I just hold what I have or try to hold what I have. And then when he calms down, I ask him for a little bit more. So you can see him starting to come down now. There's a little fuss. A lot of times when you get that fuss like that, that's when you'll get some pretty big releases in the neck, because you're already holding pressure and then they pull against your pressure and you get decent releases just like that. So I'm going to ask him again. There we go. And as soon as I feel him drop, I'm going to adjust him. Right now he's fussing, so I'm not going to do it. Good boy. And I haven't worked on him before either, so it's brand new to him. Oh, there we go. There we go. So you can see that little bit of a drop, and that's where you got to do the adjustments right there. Can't wait till you're ready. You got to do it when he's ready. Sometimes you got to hang out there for a minute until he gives you that little drop. Good boy. But that was really nice. And this is his first adjustment from me, so he doesn't quite know who I am yet or what I'm doing, so I got to be a little bit more patient with the newer horses. Boy, that was nice. Perfect. Love to see the head below the withers, the ears out to the sides like this, softness in the face. It's all really, really good. Awesome. Now I'm going to check his legs. And I don't really have a preference on which leg I do first. It just depends on whatever side I happen to be on at the time. Let's see. He's got a little bit of arthritis in his fetlocks, but not terrible. And for a 20-year-old horse, he's he's pretty flexible overall. He's pretty comfortable in his body. These guys are taken care of really, really well, because like I said, they are ridden by kids, so the owners make sure that they're feeling good, not in any pain. They get regular maintenance, they get their teeth and feet done, and they're going to be getting adjusted regularly now. That's a good boy. Good boy. A lot of times when I do this one, they'll lean away from me. I almost feel like it's because they're trying to open the chest and it feels good, so they're stretching out their pec muscles. So I'll usually let them lean away like that. Sometimes they lose their balance, so they pull away. They pull away when they do that. But I try to get them into a comfortable position before I start, so they don't do that. There we go. Good boy. Good boy. Awesome. So I do a little bit more with the legs than a lot of people do, especially with the front legs, because a lot of people, because we call this joint the knee, people don't realize how much range of motion it actually has. But in actuality, this is a wrist. It's not a knee. It's actually called a carpus in veterinary terminology, and carpus means wrist in Latin. And if you compare it to our wrist has 2 rows of 4 carpal bones or wrist bones right here. And then we have our radius and our ulna. So we have 2 bones here, 4 bones there, or 2 rows of 4. So we've got 10 total bones in our wrist. Horses, they have bone here, and then they have 2 rows of 3 bones with a accessory carpus behind. So they have 7 and 2, so they've got 9. We also have our metacarpal bones, so we have all these bones that are coming in from the hand. Of course, there's 5 of those. So we basically have 15 bones in our wrist, whereas they only have 9. So we have a lot more movement than they do because we have a lot more bones, therefore a lot more joints, therefore a lot more range of motion. But they still have 9 bones here, so they have a lot of range of motion too. It's not just flexion and extension like you would find in a knee. It's a wrist, so you have to take it through all those different motions. So you've got flexion and extension, of course, and then you have rotation, internal and external deviation. So you have to check all of it. And it looks funky because we call it by the wrong name. But if you don't check it, you're missing a lot of their range of motion. And this is called abduction of the shoulder. So I bring the shoulder up and out like this, give it a little bit of overpressure, and that puts a really good stretch in the pectoralis muscles. And this checks rotation of the shoulder. You also notice that I rotate the knee, aka the wrist. I'm doing that rotation down there. Well, that's because the wrist can do this. It can circumduct just like ours. Not as much because they don't have as many joints like I explained a minute ago, but they still have a lot of range of motion there. And it's super important to check all that. Good boy. There we go. He's got some arthritis in his right front fetlock, so I'm not going to jam on that too much so I don't make him sore. And then we'll check the back legs. Good boy. And you can see how he's calmed down now. He's being really, really well behaved, and he's not moving around, so he's figured it out, and this is pretty typical. Boy, probably wouldn't be doing this if I was still over there by the hay, but he's doing really good now. So I'm going to lift his hind leg here, and I'm going to lift it up, and then I'm going to bring it forward. Oh, there's a big pop in the hock. So I'm going to flex him, and I'm going to put a little bit of overpressure through the SI joints. That's really good. So I'm just checking for a little springiness through all these joints. Oh, there we go. Nice release in the hip. I also want to see when I flex the hind legs like that, that I can get the fetlock above the hock without forcing it above the hock. And I'll show you what I mean on this side if you can see it. Let me lower this a little bit. Excuse me. So when I pick up this leg, good boy, I want to get his fetlock above the hock. So I'm going to flex like this, and you can see it's already above the hock, and I haven't put any overpressure. I'm just picking his leg up until I hit resistance, which is right there, and it's already above. And now that there's resistance, I can really use this leg to rotate the pelvis into flexion. And there we go. And check the SI joint and see if there's any discomfort when I do that. So I like to use all these long levers to help me check some of these joints, and it works really, really well. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch his TMJs. So I like to hit this pressure point in his mouth and just get him to really, really move his lower jaw. Let him work his tongue. There's all those tongue muscles attached to the hyoid bone down here. And you can get a lot of weird things happen if those muscles that control tongue motion are tight or sore, spastic, like head shaking. They'll hold their head out to the side. They'll just nonstop play with the bit. So this is a really good thing I like to do when I'm pretty much done with the adjustment. And also something I like to teach my clients to do, because then they can help keep their TMJs and hyoids loose and moving like they're supposed to. You also notice that he goes into extension at his pull. So we're getting, if he's going into extension, that means we're getting all the muscles of flexion to stretch in the neck. So that's another really nice benefit of doing this stretch. And then of course you can get in there and check his teeth, which he really needs his teeth done. They already know that, and the dentist is coming out this week. So I'm just gonna make sure that I don't cut my finger back there. And his teeth are worse on the right side and not on the left side. Good, so I just hold this for 10, 15 seconds, let him work that, stretch it out, go into extension, rotate his head away from me, all that kind of stuff. Good boy. There we go. And then I let it go. And they'll sit here and chew and yawn and blink and take deep breaths and shake their head and all kinds of stuff like that. There we go. She got a little head shake there while I was adjusting the camera. So this is Thor again. He did awesome. Heading up to California next week to do some camps for the Girl Scouts. If you guys don't mind hitting that like button for me, and if you subscribe, I'm trying to put out more and more content and do some more lives on YouTube, and I would greatly appreciate it. And if you have commented or you want to comment or ask any questions, I will be going into those later this afternoon and responding to all those. Kind of hard to follow along while I'm doing this, but I will get to your comments and questions later on today. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Visit horsechiropractic.com if you want to learn how to stretch your horses. And I greatly appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much.